We're here with James Hambelton, and we're going to do a little story about a couple of things he's got on his wall, and there's stories to go with it. This first one, you can see this long saw with the pictures here. And then we're just showing a few other. Then there's another one here. Now we're going to have James tell the story of these here saws, how they came to be, and the story of what they depict there.
Okay, in the early 1950s, me and the other guys was always riding motorcycles. We didn't like to ride on the road, we liked to hill climb, and so we'd take the bikes off to secluded areas and climb hills and do all of that. So we went up to this place called Fordice, and it was up in the mountains, and we'd ride the bikes into Fordice, and it was a big lake, and you couldn't get across it because there was no way around it. So we just decided that it looked like on the other side of the lake there was some trails or something over there. So we decided, well, we'd like to go over there and ride. So next time we went up there, we took some pontoons, army pontoons. We tied them together, and then we floated the motorcycles across Lake Fordice and got them the other side and started climbing the hills.
And what state was that in?
That was in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Oh, in California.
California.
So, we went to the climbing the hills over there, and when we got way up in there climbing hills, why we found this little town, and we didn't know anything about it, but we thought, well, this is a neat place. And of course, it hadn't been lived in for years. It was all abandoned when they quit mining up in that area. And so we decided that we'd try to find out who owned that property up there and buy it, because we loved it up there. And we looked all over, and all we could find is that PG&E owned all that land up there.
Did you ever find out the name of the town?
Yes, the town is called the Anderson Mine.
Oh.
And so back what the Anderson Mine was, there was a 3-story building that we fixed up and lived in. And then there was a 2-story building that Mr. Anderson lived in, and his wife. And then they had a 1-story building and a blacksmith shop and a livery stable, and that was all there in this little community where we found riding those motorcycles. We wanted to try to see if we could buy any of it. Now we could find out is PG&E owned all the lands, and they wouldn't let anybody buy any of it because they used it for the watershed, fill the lakes up, and they use it for electricity and the turbines. So anyway, we gave up trying to find, and we decided, well, nobody ever comes up here anyway. We're going to fix up one of these buildings. So we picked the one that was the 3-story building, and it had 5 bedrooms in it, and this whole place is big enough for our whole family to go and have retreats. And so we took and started fixing it up, and the roof was real bad. It was shingled roof, and a lot of the shingles was missing, and it had leaked. So we bought some tin and took it up there and put tin on the roof and fixed it up. And
what year was this?
This is about 1953-4.
Okay.
And so then we still didn't have any doors or windows for it, because all the doors and windows had been busted out over the years, just vandalizing it. So down where I lived there in California, this guy had went and bought a bunch of windows and doors out of the town of Monticello. And when they built Lake Berryessa there, this town of Monticello was in there, and so they wanted to get rid of all the buildings and stuff in there, and so they let anybody go in there that wanted to get anything out of the town, doors and windows or whatever. And so my friend that I knew had went over there and took just a whole bunch of doors and windows out of that old town. He took them, and he didn't know, he thought he'd use them someday. He had them for 5 or 6 years, and he had them in his barn, and so he didn't know what to do with them, and I found out he had them. And I says, will you sell them doors and windows? We'd like to have them for our cabin. Sure. So he sold me all the doors and windows, and we loaded them up there and took them up and put them in this old 3-story building. And some of them didn't fit too good, so we'd make little places and shim them down so that we could get the windows in there. All the doors, they kind of didn't fit too good either, but we'd adjust the door frames and stuff to make the doors work. And so it went along till we had a whole house with doors and windows in it. And upstairs there was a bathroom in it, and they'd taken the tub out, and somebody slid it down the stairs and broke some of the stair treads pushing it down the stairs, and then they built a big fire in it in the living rooms of the house downstairs. So we got that out of there and put it in the backyard, and then we decided that, well, we sure would like to have this place. So my brother he had a beauty college. He was working for this guy called Speckard, and Speckard owned a beauty college, and so he was talking to him one day about this place he liked to go to up in the mountains, and was fixing up a 3-story building and just going up there and having family times up there. He says, where's this place at? So my brother told him, and he says, well, I own it. And so my brother asked him if he would be willing to sell it, and he says, no, I bought it for mining speculations. And says maybe that they can get the gold out of there one day and it'll be worth some money to me, so he wouldn't sell it. Then a few years later, and he started getting older, and his health was not too good, so he come to my brother and he says, you still want that piece of property up there at Fordice? And we says, yeah, if we can afford it. He says, I'll make it worth your while. He says, you give me $500 down, $100 a month to pay $5,000 off, and that's yours. There was 7 mining claims, 140 acres, and all those buildings on it. And that's all we had to pay for it. And he almost gave it to us. So then we just continued to go up there and work on it. We never did anything with the other buildings. And it wound up being that somebody it was still on the mining claims. When you have a mining claim, you don't own the property, you own the mining rights to it. So somebody else bought the mining rights to the other places up there, and they wanted to go up there and fix up. So then the county come by and they said that we're reverting all of this wilderness country back to its natural state, so can't be any buildings or anything on it that's permanent. He says if you want to have a gold mine on it, it's got to be a portable unit. So they was going to make us tear down the house, and the other people tore down that house, and that's the 2-story building that Mr. Anderson lived in. And it's still on the U.S. geological map, and it's called the Anderson Mine. And so even today it's still called the Anderson Mine on the map. So anyway, after a few years, they kind of quit going up there, and they didn't come back up for a long time. We just kept going up there and taking our family and enjoying the place. And then I guess we had it until about 1990. No, it's 2000. About 2000 we had it. And my brother got throat cancer, and he wasn't able to go up there anymore. And my wife had passed away, and so my daughter was wanting me to move to Colorado to be closer to her. So we decided to sell this property up by the Fordice Lake. And
So you never actually tore down the building then, the cabin?
no,
Okay.
we just kept fixing it up and keeping it. One of the neat things about that place is in the wintertime, I always thought there was lots of snow in Colorado, but California has lots and lots of snow. So I can remember going up there in the wintertime. You had to go in with snowshoes, and I got a picture of me standing with my foot on the roof of this 3-story building. That's how deep the snow was. But the thing that the Lord does with it, it says, here this big cabin, 3-story cabin, sitting down in this big hole of snow, and the snow is always about a foot away from the building, because the building has enough heat regular heat in it, that it'll melt the snow up against the building, so the snow doesn't get up against the building. It just sits there in a big hole all year long till the snow melts. And so we sold the place, and now they go up there and they enjoy it just like we did, and it's still the same old place.
Well, tell us about these 2 little saws. So I'm going to go over here first to the little saw. Now the little saw is a picture of kind of the cabin and the forest and the little lake and another little building over here. And that's
Right, we call that the
and that's signed by Mary McGonigal, it looks like.
She's the one that painted the saw. So that is the little cabin that was.
And did she paint the other saw too?
Yes.
So and this bigger saw is the same cabins and just a little bit more of a view, it looks like.
Right.
And there's some deer and woods and the cabin and lake. Okay, so Mary McConical.
Anyway, she was going to my brother's beauty college, and to go to the college you have to pay tuition to go to school. So she was a painter, and she painted different things for people to earn money to go to school. So my mom was there and saw what she's doing, and so she asked her if she'd paint a picture of my cabins. She said yeah, so she gave her 3 pictures. And there's one on one lake, and then the cabin in the middle, and another lake, Fordice Lake, and the other one. So she put all those pictures together and painted that saw. And the other cabin is we called that the honeymoon cabin, and it was down closer to the lake. It's probably a half a mile from the other cabin. And I was fixing it up, and when my mom would go down there and stay sometimes, and she liked that old cabin. So I had it all fixed, except only had half of the roof tinned. And so after we left that winter and went out and came back the next year, somebody had kicked the walls out of the front of the house, and with no walls in it, the snow caved the roof in. And so it just kind of was a disaster after that, so I never fixed it up anymore after that.
All right. Is that about all you'd like to say about the times in the cabin up there? Or?
The only thing is my mother used to like to go up there in the summertime and stay. She just loved it up there. So we'd take her up usually in the spring, and we'd go up every week or so and take food and stuff to just check on her. And so she well, my brother had decided that she needed to have some kind of protection up there. She's way out there's 15 miles off the road, all rugged four-wheel drive country up there. The only one that comes through there is backpackers and stuff. So my brother decided that he wanted her to have a gun when she'd get out and walk around. So he bought her a pistol and a holster, and from then on we called her Pistol Packing Mama. And she'd go outside and go walk around. She'd carry that pistol with her. So when there was when I got married, we went different places, and then after about 3 weeks, we wanted to go up to the cabin and backpack. So we went up there, and my mom was there, and she decided that we wanted to go down on the river and camp down on the river in Fordice River. Really nice area down there, and Emma had never been down there to see any of it. So my mom decided, won't I just go with you? So she walked down there with us, and Emma and I set up our tent. Mom didn't have a tent. She says, I'll just sleep out under the stars. So she was out there long, and about midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, our tent fell down. And my mom had come and cut the ropes on her tent and dropped it on us. And so, anyway, we just stayed out the rest of the night. It was getting towards morning anyway. And then we went back to the cabin, and then I decided that I wanted to take a raft. I had a raft, and I wanted to go up to the upper part of Fordice Lake. And so we put all our stuff in this raft, and we rode way up there to the upper end of Fordice Lake, and there was an island out in there. And this island didn't have any wood or nothing on it, but we wanted to camp on that island. It was still our honeymoon, and we just wanted to do something different. So we went out there and set up our tent on the island and everything. And I had to go over to the main island and get some wood for the fire. So I went over there and put wood in the raft and come back. And then the next morning after we had been there a night or two, we saw a horse over on the main land, and it was just walking up over the hill there, and we thought, we'll try to go catch that horse. So we took the raft and went over there, but the horse took off and we couldn't catch him. So it was after a few days we decided we'd go back to the cabin. We went back there, and my mom had caught that horse, tied it up in the backyard, and she had that horse all tied up back there. She was pulling grass and stuff, feeding the horse. And so somehow after we left, we couldn't find out who had owned it or nothing. So we left and left her there with the horse, and somehow the horse must have kicked her in the back. And she laid out there all night, nobody else around. And finally the next morning she was able to get up and get back into the house. And she had a great big knot on the back of her back where the horse had kicked her. And so she was up there all week in that situation. Then my brother came up that weekend to check on her, found out that she had been kicked by the horse, and the horse had got away while she was down and couldn't get out. So didn't know where it went. So she didn't want to go home. She didn't want to go get it checked out. She just was no miner's wife and lived in that kind of situation all her life. And so anyway, she stayed up there, and my brother they had a stuffed chair in there, kind of a overstuffed chair, and my brother took and cut a big hole in the back of it so she could lean up against that, and that hole he cut in the back of that chair would fit into her back where it was all swelled up, and so she'd sit there in her chair. Then I went up the next weekend, and she still didn't want to come out. She was doing better, so we just left her there. A few years later, it was time to go get her out because we wouldn't let her stay up there after it started snowing. So I went over to get her out, and it was in the fall, but I didn't take any chains or nothing because it's still early in enough year that there wasn't any snow on the ground. So told Mom that we had to get her packed up and get out of there because snow wouldn't be too far away. So we packed the car up and got it all ready to go, and I went out to start the car, and the battery was dead. Oh no, 15 miles to town.
Hang on, we're gonna pause this, and we're gonna do another little part for the battery story.
Okay.
Hang on.